G'day guys, Source20 here and welcome back to Parkitect. Today's episode is going to be structured a little bit differently. I've been doing a mix of time-lapse and live play in all of these videos, but today's episode is going to be mostly time-lapse. I'm going to stick with a pretty lengthy time-lapse for about 20 minutes, and then at the very end of the video I will do a live play. And the reason why I'm doing it this way for this video, oh great, already off to a great start in the commentary. But the reason why I'm doing it like that is I wanted to get a lot of work done and a lot of progress made in this park. I've really felt that this park has looked just like it's been incomplete, obviously because we're still working on it. But I did want to see a little bit more of a complete park while working on things, and then I can work on some bigger projects like more roller coasters and some more interesting rides. So I felt I would take this opportunity to just smash out a whole bunch of work. I always feel like as much as I love doing the live plays, they also take up quite a lot of time. You know, the amount of time that I could spend doing a live play, I could have built, you know, a lot more than I probably would have. I generally don't get much work done in a live play. So yeah, I just thought I'd just keep a time lapse for this one, and then yeah, I'll show you generally what I've been working on in the live play at the very end. So expect that around the 20-minute mark. It's a bit of a long episode, this one. And something else that I wanted to do in this episode was I wanted to put in a whole bunch of the things that you guys have been suggesting over the last couple of months, and there's been quite a lot of suggestions, and I've been getting to bits and pieces of them, like changing names of rides and fast food places. You'll probably see the icon flash up every now and again. It might be a name that you've suggested. But I've just been saving those suggestions in my phone, just taking screenshots as I've been working on it, and when I remember I just put them in, and we've got a whole backlog, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to do most of it. So I'll talk about that as well in the live play. So the first thing you saw me do in this episode was I changed the height of this red main building that I built in episode 2. It was just looking a little bit short, and I think some of the other buildings are a little bit short too, and these are just some of the things that I'm going through and changing as we work on this series. You know, I guess because this is my first series and first time playing this game, I'm still trying to figure out exactly scale and how everything should look in comparison to one another. And so for instance, when I built that wooden roller coaster and I built the entrance for it, that's a pretty big entrance, and it was bigger than the main building of this theme park, so that didn't really make much sense. So changing the height made a big difference, and I'll probably go and change the height difference on a couple of the other buildings too. But now that I've got a bit of an idea of how high buildings should be, I can do that for every other building that I place down from now on. And speaking of more buildings, this is a very generic food court that I am building right here. I can't remember what I ended up making the main source of food in here, but I think it was something like hot dogs and soft drink, and there's also a bathroom inside here too. You'll see me place them down shortly. I generally start with the roofs. I don't know if this is like the best technique, but I'll usually start with the rooftops, and then when I've figured out where the roof is going to sit, I then place down the buildings and cross my fingers to see if it all comes together properly. Building in this game is really easy, but I struggle with how I want everything to look. You know, I think everything's going to fit together, but then sometimes it doesn't. When I say sometimes, I mean all the time. I built this probably about 3 times. I know it looks like I've just built it, got it right the first time, but it didn't happen that way. And I wanted to keep this pretty generic, so I just went for a very standard theme park-esque building, and just playing around with these windows too, just clipping them with some of the building walls, and trying to figure out a good color scheme for it too. I guess it might be a little bit European looking. I actually got the idea for this building from one that sits in Magic Mountain, and I don't really know exactly what food is served at this place, but it did serve as the inspiration for this building, even though it turned out nothing like it. I guess the shape of the roof might be a little bit similar, but generally it's a pretty different looking building. I tend to do that. I'll start with a source of inspiration and I'll try to completely recreate it. I also do this in City Skylines, and then generally it just turns out to be completely different, which is I guess a bit of a positive, because it's good that it turns out different to, you know, something that already exists. So that's a technique that I generally use. And now the building has changed color and I've removed some of the rooftops. And that's because I am still playing with the color scheme. I haven't really figured out exactly how it's going to look. And I'm also adding in a little bit of interior decorations. I don't want to go too crazy with decorations because I'm generally looking from an isometric bird's eye view rather than looking down inside the actual building. Though, I don't know, I find it, I did this in Roller Coaster Tycoon as well. I always felt like I had to detail just a little bit at least, and even though I probably never looked inside, and generally I would build a whole bunch of stuff on the inside and then lose interest and have a completely unfinished building. So I'm trying not to do that. I guess having a YouTube channel also helps to not leave things unfinished or under detailed, because you guys always can tell. That's one of the positives, I guess. And something that I wanted to achieve for this area at least was I wanted it to be a little bit more on the nature side of things. Now that we're getting it a little bit further away from the main entrance, things are a little bit less dense around this area, and I wanted there to be a little bit more of a focus on nature. So I'm going to be putting in a like a garden slash food court, and I thought this looked pretty cool. It turned out pretty picturesque, and I think it's a really great spot right next to the wooden roller coaster. At this stage, I haven't named it yet. There's a whole bunch of name suggestions for that I screenshotted, and I'm just gonna go through and choose the best one, and then I'll announce it in the live play as well. Lots of things that I'm promising for the live play. I better make note of that. And something you're gonna see me do in a second is I am placing down these circles, these circle shapes, and using them as like tables. And I know that on the workshop there's like a great set of tables. At this stage I'm trying to steer clear of anything on the workshop, anything mod related, and although like I've got one mod running, which is I think decorations or scenery collision, something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but it just means that I can splice together lots of scenery, and I can't actually imagine working without that. But I know there's a whole bunch of really great assets and mods on the workshop, which I'm going to start downloading as well, especially for the next series. For this series, I'm just going to leave it pretty much vanilla, and for the next series, we'll dive into a whole bunch of other mods because they're looking pretty good. And speaking of mods, I said that in the last episode I was going to do an on-ride camera view of the roller coaster, and I ended up not doing it, and that's because I downloaded that mod and I tried it out, and I don't know, it just took a lot of the magic away from this game, and I don't know, it just didn't really work. So I think I might not use that mod for a little while at least. Maybe, I guess what happens is when you change perspective, you can then see all the glitchiness of this game because it's in a different view that you shouldn't really be seeing. And I even tried out the, I think it's like free perspectives, or I can't remember the name of the mod, but it basically means that you can change perspective of the game, and again, it just changed it too much for my liking. I could be convinced maybe that mod will have some updates or something like that. As cool as both those mods are, I think for what I'm trying to go for, I think I might just stick with just the general isometric. I could be convinced. I mean, feel free to try and convince me in the comments, but at this stage, I think I'm just gonna stick with the view that we have. Something that I did about a minute ago, and I should have talked about it a minute ago, but I'm gonna talk about it now. But I created this really cool backlot that sat behind the restaurant and, in between the restaurant and the wooden roller coaster. And of course, that whole area, it's just purely for looks. There's no real practicalness about it, except I guess those props and the scenery that are placed down are generating like a good atmosphere for the guests, I guess. So that's the only thing that's really working for it. But no service guys actually use those paths. But I do really like the idea behind it. It's a bit of a back maintenance area where probably people aren't really walking around or visiting that often, but it's probably like a bit of a good shortcut if you're like a maintenance worker or something. And I placed down a couple of just still poles and stuff just to make it look like some things are being stored around that area. And now you just see me create this underground hauler pathway. Now, okay, let me give you a little bit of backstory behind this. So a lot of people were suggesting over the last couple of episodes saying that I should be creating the underground tunnels for this people who are looking after the park, the people who work there. And I didn't realize that theme parks actually have underground pathways. I really just thought that was something the game implemented just to make it easy for us to get stuff around. So I thought, alright, cool, I'll totally make some underground paths. And you can create these chutes that basically transport goods from one part of the park to the other. And it's not just goods, but you can also do the same for trash. And it just means that you don't have to have so much backstage pathways, which makes sense. And I think that's what they do in real parks as well. So I was like, okay, cool, let's totally do that. But because I created this scenario and because I created my own, I guess, cargo areas and trash dumping areas too, I didn't place down one of the main buildings that you need to be able to create those chutes, basically, those underground chutes. So I actually can't create any underground chutes. I can only create underground pathways, which doesn't really matter right now, but down the track when we start getting a bit bigger in this park, I don't even know if that's going to be possible. So that totally sucks. The only way I can get people to clean certain areas, like really far away from where my cargo and the garbage is being dumped, is by creating physical underground walkways where my staff will then use those paths. So that's pretty annoying, and that's something I didn't realize when I created this scenario. So that's obviously something that I'm going to need to remember next time I create a scenario. I'm gonna have to hide one of those buildings somewhere so that so that we don't have to look at that building. I can create my own type of cargo building and also be able to have chutes that transport goods and trash from one part of the park to the other. So yeah, thanks everyone who was suggesting that. That's actually really useful, knowing that that's what parks really do, because I am trying to keep this pretty realistic and trying to make it look like it could be a real life park. So yeah, that's something I have to do. But I guess in the meantime, there is that cool maintenance yard where I've now put a staff room for my staff, and there's just a couple of little decorative areas too, which I actually thought that area turned out pretty cool. And I also put down a couple of extra rides because I have been slowly deleting the rides that I placed down that were just placeholders just to generate money and to get people into the park. I've been slowly deleting them and putting in more permanent rides, and those rides that I placed against the mountain, they're most probably just gonna stay there. I really like their current location, so I might keep them there. And now I'm working in a different part of the park. I had intended to keep on following that path that I created and the path that I was working towards. However, I very quickly realized how expensive it is to buy more land. That's another thing that I'm going to have to change when I create my next park, is just to buy all the land that I want straight up, because buying more land is really expensive. And now that I'm looking at expanding, I kind of feel like I can't until I just churn through a lot of the years and just get a big backlog of money so that I can actually just buy big chunks of land. At the moment, I'm just slowly repaying my loans, and when I finish paying them off, I should be generating quite a bit of money, which I am not doing too bad at the moment. But buying more land is really expensive, and I thought that would be a really fun element to put into this gameplay, which it kind of is. But at the same time, there's a whole bunch of ideas that I want to start implementing that take up quite a bit of space, and I can't do them yet. So again, another thing I need to think about next time I make a map. But what I was saying is, this area that I'm working on over here is another stretch of the main street, and I wanted this area to have a very generic Main Street feel to it. And, you know, there's a lot of references I can make. I mean, Six Flags pretty much nail this. Pretty much any theme park in the US has some sort of main street that has very generic looking buildings. So I wanted to follow a very similar structure, and I've already got a main street, but this is sort of a little second one that I wanted to place down. And you can see this rocket that I've also placed down here. So my idea behind this was this little stretch that I'm creating here, this corner, is going to have very generic looking buildings. Only a couple of them will be able to be walked in. This other one that I'm creating too, that is cream and brown looking, it's purely just there for aesthetics. You know, this is something that theme parks do a lot. You know, they'll have a couple of buildings that you can actually walk into, whereas some other buildings that might be attached to them are purely just there to hold either storage, or there might be back lots, or there might be other areas that will hold rides. And that's actually the way that this particular building works. This building is pretty much just holding this this motion simulator. And I thought it might be cool to have, you know, these generic theme park buildings here, and then, you know, just going with like just a very generic theming, you know, almost slightly European, but then have a bit of a sci-fi twist to this one building. And what I've done is I've just spliced this rocket into there and just changed the color scheme to this red color, because I felt like red's a little bit sci-fi. And yeah, just added in a couple of machinery elements to it and just left it at that. And I just thought that was quite cool, because it feels like it's a part of the main street. Everything's very generic and normal looking, and then there's this one building that has a bit of a sci-fi element to it. And I reckon that this ride, even though it's just a motion simulator, I feel like this ride should have a pretty big part in the theme park. You know, I think that's, you know, whatever the simulation is, they've nailed it. You know, like inside this building, there's really good theming. The ride itself is really well done. It might just be a very simple motion simulator, but they've killed it. It's a good one. And something that I really wanted to do for this particular area was I wanted all the shop fronts to have that generic theme park look, but then as soon as the building extended away from where the guests are, I wanted it just to be purely plain, you know, just like pretty much a warehouse. You know, they're just storing what is held inside, whether it be a food court or a motion simulator, and then when it's away from other people, when it's away from the guests, they just like slap a very plain paint coat on it. They put tin roof on over the top. It's practically a warehouse. That's generally the case in theme parks. You know, they just want the face of it to be really well designed and the scenery to be on point. And then as soon as guests aren't around that particular area, it's trash, which is what I wanted. And I think I'm going to be doing a few more of that sort of idea in this game as well. The last thing that I am putting into this park, I really needed another roller coaster, and I thought that this Wild Mouse would probably be the best suited for it. And I don't know how long this roller coaster is going to stay in the theme park. I did a very generic structure to this, which is fine. You know, like I actually kind of like the way that this roller coaster turned out, but I do have more in mind for this particular area. I think that this area deserves like some sort of log flume, or maybe go-karts, or even a roller coaster that is a little bit more modern than the wooden roller coaster. But I just thought for the time being, this Wild Mouse would probably best suit this area. It'll generate a bit of cash, it will hold its place, it'll get people into the park, and then we can start extending out the park a little bit more. And I figured I may as well just spend like 20 minutes detailing this thing, and I ended up just changing the theme of it, so it's now got these minecarts on it. I decided to change a little bit of the scenery around too, but again, I was just keeping it very basic. I didn't really want to go too crazy. I will probably end up changing this ride maybe like in 2 or 3 episodes time, but in the next episode we'll be working in a different area, so this thing can just stay and do its thing. And to be honest, I kind of like that idea, because that's what theme parks do. Theme parks will have a you know, a ride or a roller coaster, and it'll be in the theme park for, you know, only like a short period of time. And when they built that ride, they knew that it wasn't going to be there for, you know, a long period of time. It's just purely there to get through the busy season or to get them out of some sort of sticky situation. This ride is purely getting me out of a sticky situation because I want to get more cash into this park. And we are starting to get there too. So in the live play, I'll show you a little bit more about the money and the financial part of everything that's been going on. Some of the things I couldn't touch on in this episode so far. But that's pretty much it. I'm going to get into the live play and I'll talk about everything that I've been doing. Before I show you everything that I've been working on, I just want to quickly show you the finance side of things, because Dollarwood is starting to make a fair decent amount of money, which is really good. I mean, it's slow, but it's at least there's a profit. I ended up paying back all my loans, which is great. I had both these loans out, so it's good that I don't have any monthly fees at the moment. And I'm just going to try and crank up a bit more cash over the next couple of years. That's game years. I don't plan to do this for a few years. But yeah, I just plan to get some money so I can start buying some land. I'll also talk about where I'm going to be building the next episodes at the end of this video. So first things first, I extended this building, made it a little bit taller. The reason why I did that is because I think the scale was a little bit off. I think the scale's a little bit off with these ones too. They're just a little bit too small. And I know this game is cartoony, so it's not like a really big deal, but I do want to keep to some sort of scale. I think that's better. I think that this ride entrance, this roller coaster entrance is a little bit too big, but you know, for the time being, it's fine. Next time we do a series in a theme park, I'll try and keep in mind scale just a little bit better. But yeah, it's always tricky with scale. It's always hard to realize how you should be working in a game, especially when you're brand new to a game. So that's something I'm going to be working on next time. I ended up naming this roller coaster Aries. That was a name suggestion. I think that's a pretty good fit for it. And I added in some pylons, just some custom props around here because it was a little bit, kind of cut it off a bit. It looked a little bit dangerous. That's something else somebody mentioned. Could use probably a pylon there too. I might add that in. As well as I ended up changing this road here, which was a service park path, which was the same as this one. I ended up changing it to just the regular guest park and just creating this staff only. Just trying to make that decoration a little bit better, but it's still not great. And I think that's because there's nothing blocking this view from all this crap. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame. Actually, in general, let's have a look at all the ratings because it's not too bad. I mean, decoration's pretty good. I mean, the park is pretty dirty, which is something that I'm working on. Rain cover, I don't really know how much that does. Yeah, trash isn't great. Vandalism, pretty spot on. People must be enjoying themselves. Let's have a look at some of the staff management. I ended up splitting the park into 3 spots like that, which I think is working pretty nicely. And I've generally have 2 staff members of each kind. So I've got, oh, let's have a look. No. Okay. So take that back. I don't really have 2 staff members of each kind in each area, but whatever I'm doing, it's doing fine. I think splitting up, I think that's probably a decent size for, you know, staff management. This area here is one of my favorite locations in the park, I think. Pretty much it's one of those builds where from any angle you look at, it looks really good. And, you know, when I love angles like this in anything that I end up building because, you know, there's nothing unfinished in this frame. It's all completely complete. And that might even be the thumbnail. I really love this area of the park. I think it looks so sick. So, I mean, I was going for a very generic look for this building here. I think we are serving hot dogs and drinks inside. Yeah, I think it's fruit juice and hot dogs. So yeah, I mean, nothing nothing unique about that. But I really love this seating area at the back here. And then this wall as well that separates where the guests are and then where what I would imagine all the staff would be sort of wandering around doing maintenance and getting from this location to here. Speaking of this location, there's a path that goes from around here to down there. That's fine. I mean, it works pretty well. It would have been better if I could have used one of those chutes. When I'm talking about chutes, I am talking about if I had plopped down a certain cargo hub in this area here, then I would have had an extra tab that would have given me access to like a different feature that would get goods from one place to another much quicker than people walking around. So that's a real shame. That's something I have to remember for next series. This little area over here is just like a pretty generic looking area. I mean, there's nothing, I mean, these rides are just kind of just normal. I've actually got one of these, I've got two of those rides, which is killing me, but for the time being, that's fine. They're both generating a bit of cash. And this roller coaster here, let's just have a good, decent look at it so you guys can see it run through. So this is just, great, lovely. Let's just zoom through this. This is like a pretty generic Wild Mouse roller coaster. Ended up giving it a Wild West theme to it. So we've got these mine carts, which I think look pretty cool. And in terms of the ratings, I mean, it's doing a pretty decent job of getting people on the ride. They think the decoration's amazing, which I really don't think so. If you want to see this on the workshop, by the way, just let me know in the comments and I'll just chuck it up there so you guys can see it and play with it if you really want to. I think it's pretty generic, and I wasn't actually going to build it myself. I was going to just plop one down that was already pre-built, but I'm kind of glad that I put a little bit of effort into it. But we'll see how long this lasts for. I might end up getting rid of it in a couple of weeks. Again, let me know if you think I should keep it or not, because maybe I will just leave it where it is. And this area over here, oh actually hold on, let's talk about this. Ended up adding a couple of effects in. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. What else? This is half finished. I'm going to work on this area in the next episode. Actually, I'm going to work on all this in the next episode, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do in a sec. But that, I think, is very, very cool. This took me ages. This was definitely not the first attempt. I recorded and then built it and hated it and then deleted it, and that process went on for ages. And I think the finished product is quite unique. I mean, you can sort of see what I was going for. This is a very generic looking building right here, but then the color scheme and the rocket on top, and just a couple little props as well, just to keep that sci-fi theme to it, I think works pretty nicely. And this is that warehouse element that I was adding. I really do hate the rain in this game. I've always hated rain in games. But yeah, that was, I don't know, that's something that I've always wanted to put down in this game, so I'm going to be doing a little bit more of that in other series as well. So in terms of what I'm going to do in the next episode, I plan to work on all of this area around here. And the idea is to create a bit more of a kiddie area where there's going to be a lot of flat rides that are, you know, a lot of gentle flat rides. I'm going to put in a roller coaster too that is probably a junior coaster, something directed at kids, but I might go a little bit more excited than that. Please stop raining. And I probably need to wait a little while as well throughout the years so I can get a bit more money and then buy up some land, because that's really expensive, and I didn't really realize that. And as you can see, we have a lot of land to buy, which I'm not going to do in the next series. That's all these things that I'm learning about this game that I'm regretting not putting into this scenario that I built. But yeah, I'm going to work around here. I'm also going to turn parts of this into a food court, and I might even add some sort of other ride element to this building too, because it's going to be a somewhat biggish building. But I think that's pretty much it. I think that's everything that I worked on in this episode. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I've really enjoyed building a lot more of this park. And yeah, until next time, have a great week. I'll see you in the next one. See you later.